This is 91.3 FM WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, all the way on the other side of the planet Earth in Croatia, we have famed comic book artist who has worked on such titles as Witchblade, Batman Arkham Knights, and Sunstone on the show with us. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Stephen.
Pleasure to be here.
Your artwork blew me away for the first time ever, and probably for a lot of people, was when Witchblade, when you were drawing Witchblade. How do you describe your art? Because it's a combination of like computers and drawing, correct?
Well, I've been painting digitally for, at this point, about like 12, 13, maybe even 15 years. I don't even keep count anymore. My roots are in traditional painting and sculpting and drawing and everything like that. So basically, I just kind of transfer what I learned from, classic materials into the digital world. And as far as how I would define my style, it goes all over the place. Like sometimes I feel more like drawing realism. Sometimes I'm gonna go completely stylish. It really is, just how I feel on any given day, really. So it's kind of a weird combo of like stylish realism, expressive, kind of animated looks. It depends, really.
What type of programs do you use? I mean, where do you get your style from? What is it drawn from?
Style I get from, general, I've said this before and I'll say it again, is just basically artistic handwriting. It's you do something for a long enough time, and if your foundation is strong, you're going to develop a kind of a likable handwriting out of that. So that's what my style is really coming from. As for my programs, depending on what I feel like doing and depending on the nature of the project, I will usually use an older version of Photoshop, because on that one, like Photoshop CS2 is the one that I personally am using. That one supports, CS3. Oh, Jesus Christ, I forgot. Yeah, it's an older version of Photoshop, but it's one that still supports one of my personal inventions from back in the day, a blending brush that enables me to kind of blend colors in a painterly way. It was something I kind of stumbled upon by poking and provoking the program until it started acting the way I wanted it to. So yeah, that's pretty much what I use for standard painting. And sometimes when I want to dabble in 3D, I use a program called ZBrush. It's something I've been using mostly for either video game development or partially for comic book creation. Like projects like Ravine, I would often create like dragons like in full 3D, and then I would combine them with my painting, and it blended pretty well together. It meshed well, just because I have this approach to rendering realism that works well with 3D. Like it can really complement each other. So that would be that as far as my technological side of the process goes.
What comics were you reading growing up? Were you always a comic book fan, and did you always want to break into comics?
Oh, no. When I was a kid in Croatia, there was a strong influx of Italian comics that was even before there was a Croatia. We were part of former Yugoslavia. We had a strong comic market of imported Italian comics and translated. There were Zagor Tene, Martin Mister, Dylan Dog, stuff like that. Those were exceedingly popular here and really pretty much remain popular up to this date. Like, we don't really get a lot of American comics. We are seeing sort of a resurgence of American comics being translated now, but even that's just more as like deluxe hardcovers, because it's kind of a European thing where we like our comics oversized and hardcover. And as far as me being a comic fan, like in general, I had no desire to go into comics until somewhere in mid-high school. Because like back in high school, I used to be like obsessed with getting myself into like movies. I wanted to work for like studios like Stan Winston Studios and stuff like that, ILM, that create movie monsters. I was obsessive about it. I built myself a full-sized Predator model back in high school. In my room, I built replicas of Starship Troopers, bugs, of all sorts of like movie monsters that I liked at the time. And it was somewhere by the, like, I think middle of my high school, that we had this kind of an exhibition, like some sort of a comic book art exhibit that was, and we went as a school basically to check it out. And oddly enough, like it was a bunch of European artists, so some of ours, Esad Ribic work was there. the oddest thing was there was this one big cover there also portrayed like on the exhibit of the book that just the name really stuck with me back then, even in high school. And it was a cover from Witchblade by Michael Turner back then. And like I was like, this is a cool cover, but holy crap, is it a cool name? So after a while, like after that exhibit, I kind of started dabbling in comics, and then I started becoming more and more obsessive about it. And then I caught the storytelling bug, and after that, you just couldn't drop it.
And little did you know, years later, you would actually be working on Witchblade.
Yeah, that was the weirdest part of my entire freaking life, because when I came to college, that was my first time when I actually gained access to internet, because we were kind of, a little bit backwards here. It took some time until technology really caught up in Croatia. It's kind of, we had a war, and then we were a post-communist country. It was a whole thing. So when we actually got access to internet back during my college days, I started actually, I went to the free college internet, just kind of started Googling everything and anything. And after my extensive stint of Googling porn, I was like, hey, you know what? time to look up some other things. So I started looking up, Stan Winston Studios, seeing photos that I never even, could dream of, freaking awesome stuff of them building models. And I'm like, what else do I Google? And I'm like, hey, I remember a silly name, Witchblade. Google that. And after that, I started obsessively drawing Witchblade. Had a whole phase where I was completely trying to copy Mark Silvestri, Michael Turner style. And then later on, I discovered the magic of Alex Ross and started aping his realism. And, at a certain point, I realized that I was building everything on a really shoddy foundation of me not really knowing anatomy. So I went back to basics and started training myself in anatomy, which then resulted in my own personal style, kind of evolving from that. And, well, here I am right now.
A lot of your artwork seems to be very well connected with like stuff in the supernatural and fantasy kind of genres, hence like Witchblade, and you have a book you're currently working on called
Switch, yeah.
Switch. Do you feel like it kind of gravitates towards that because of the style it is and how unbelievably, fantasy and gothic looking it is?
Honestly, it's just more of a coincidence. Like in Europe, we have this weird influx of all sorts of like genres and stuff, while in America, the superhero genre pretty much is very predominant. So I'm coming from that kind of a background where the comics from my childhood were supernatural stuff like Dylan Dog and Martin Mysterio. You just kind of get used to that. You get used to the horror. You get used to like supernatural stuff. So Witchblade really was something that was up my alley back then, and that kind of sort of just has flown into my other projects, such as like Death Vigil or Switch. It's all just ends up being a lot of supernatural stuff with a lot of character moments and character development and stuff like that. But yeah, I was never really a superhero fan that much. I like them fine. It's just I always preferred the supernatural genre myself. It just kind of really set well with me.
The one thing I noticed about when you were drawing like Sarah Pazzini and the other women of Witchblade, you weren't drawing them with like their clothes being ripped apart and their breasts hanging out and this like ridiculous TNA style of book. Something that Ron Mars, when he came on the show, said he would refuse to do if that's the way the book was going to go. And you drew these women with head-to-toe body armor, but still drew them extremely sexy.
Well, the thing is, when I started working, like all artists, we kind of start, running from our own influences. My influences back in the early days were, the 90s style artists, which really were, over-the-top dynamic and over-the-top sex appeal. And that was something that was really hard to shake off. I have zero problems with sexuality, zero problem with sex appeal. I'm European. We never really developed that kind of prudishness. But the thing is,
hence your comic book Sunstone.
Oh yes, but that's the thing. Like, I over time I've kind of developed this attitude towards drawing that stuff in a more honest way. Like, a character doesn't have to constantly pose, sexily, especially a female character. Like, she doesn't have to constantly pose sexily. Like, we get it. She's attractive.
Yeah.
Let her sit like a person. It's one of those things that kind of went into my own personal development, not really as me making a stand for something. It's me making a stand as a storyteller, because if you constantly keep doing that, you're inviting cynicism. Like if you're trying to tell people, no, it's a good story, but your every frame of that female character is her, just constantly popping her ass out, arching her back, just making every panel about, hey, do you get it? She's sexy. Do you get it? She's sexy. Like you're weakening the quality of your own storytelling. But when I started working on Witchblade, I was in this transitional phase where I was still under the influence of the cool stylishness of the 90s. So, I didn't really shake off my, obsession with, certain poses and stuff like that, arching backs and stuff like that. But I was getting there. I was starting to understand that it wasn't really doing shit for my storytelling. Like it's not doing anything for the character in that moment. And somewhere along, a few years later, like things started kind of sitting well with me to the point where I could actually, where I could make even a story like Sunstone and make people understand that, yes, this is actually about the characters. This is not, it's not that kind of a thing where you would just think, oh, well, I know what it's going to be. And that's the thing, same was with Witchblade. Witchblade is a book that on a concept level has infinite potential. It's just, it really depends on where you're going with the execution. If you're going for a sexualized tits and ass book that's going to be all about coolness and over-the-top stuff, you can do it. You can do it well. There's an audience for that. There always will be an audience for that. But if you really want to tell good stories, then you have to adjust yourself artistically. Like if you want the audience to actually suspend their disbelief, you're going to have to do something artistically that's not going to constantly strain that disbelief. It's like you're already having enough problem of making them believe that this woman in a magical suit of armor made by a magical gauntlet is fighting a horde of vampire zombies from Mars. It's like at a certain point you got to go like, okay, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm gonna have her actually have her battle pose look like a battle pose. So it's stuff like that. It's a learning process for me. It was to actually strengthen my own ability of storytelling by kind of reducing, pandering.
Is there any one particular character that you've always wanted to work on in comics now that you're in there?
Honestly, when I was younger, all of them, like so many characters. Like I was just like, oh, maybe one day I'll do Batman or fucking Superman or Spider-Man or this or that, all sorts of them. And now I'm just so jaded with other people's creations. Like I'm just like, I just want to draw my own characters. I just want to work on my own stories. I got stories to tell, and really, that's pretty much all I'm up for right now. It's like I've become obsessed with the creator-owned stuff, because with creator-owned you get the freedom that you just don't get when doing work for hire. Because at any given point, like let's say you make the best possible story in any of these universes that you're not an owner of, you make this amazing story, like at the push of a button or an editor's whim, like your story can be just completely retconned. It's like, well, yeah, no, that didn't happen, or like, it's like, well, all this progress that you made, we're putting a new creative team and completely undoing everything that you did, and you kind of lose the motivation to even go into all that. So right now, I'm just really enjoying myself doing anything that I'm personally writing and that I'm either owning completely or co-owning.
Did you find a lot of problems working on Witchblade?
Not really, no. I mean, back in the day, I wasn't really, I wasn't participating on any writing level, so pretty much for me it was simple. Ron gave me very clear, concise, well-written scenarios. I would just sit down, draw them, and we would both be happy with it, But again, that was back in the day when I wasn't, a writer. Like, I was, but I wasn't, dealing with any of their stuff. I was just kind of doing stuff in secret for my own, like, developing projects and stuff like that, working on ideas. But, there's a thing in the comic industry when you hear like an artist is like, well, I'm going to write now. And everybody's like, well, we know what that's going to be like. You're just going to make, big scenes and any poor excuse to kind of staple those big scenes together because you're an artist. You think in big blasts and explosions, And, we all, every artist who kind of tries to do their own story, we kind of go through that, making those mistakes and both, having those mistakes being expected of us. So, back then when I was doing Witchblade, I was really happy with just working with a guy who could really competently write me a scenario that I could read and go, I see everything that's written here. I see it in my head clearly. Thanks, dude. You rocked it, It was very satisfying.
I recommend this one particular book, which is by you, over and over and over again to people, in whether they're in relationships, they're gay, lesbian, straight, if they love BDSM or not. I recommend Sunstone to so many people because it works on so many levels for so many reasons. It's such a great book. I love it. I have the first 3 volumes of that comic book.
Yeah, Sunstone was the strangest creation of my life. I never expected that thing to exist. But then again, like, on one level, I'm surprised that it exists, and on the other, I'm like, who the hell am I kidding? That's how every one of my projects started, because every one of my projects started with me just doodling stuff for fun. Because that's how Death Vigil also started. I was like, hey, look, I'm making these characters, aren't they cute? Let me just put a word bubble here, word bubble there. Well, crap, here's a series. Same was with Ravine also. It's like it just started doodling and bam, here's books. Same was with Switch. Switch started as a bunch of just personal jokes, my own take of like, hey, what if the Witchblade didn't end up in Sarah Pezzini's hands, but instead it ended up with this kid, and just started making little joke strips and stuff. And that's the same with Sunstone. Sunstone started during the time of my bleakest complete creative block, because like I hit a dead end just by the time I finished my run on Witchblade. Like I was done, I was burned. I was like, you know what? I've done work for video games. Maybe I should just switch to video games. Like these guys want me to work with them and on a lot more projects. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll do that because I'm done. Like I was so burned out. And then I was sitting at home and I'm talking to my wife, Linda, and we both knew what creative burnout was like. She's also a comic artist, a comic writer. And I'm like, I'm done. Like I can't remember the last time I truly felt the fire. So I was sitting and thinking to myself, like, when the hell was it the last time I actually felt like I couldn't stop drawing, like I was possessed, like And then I remembered when it was. And back in the day, just before I got into Top Cow, like I was posting my stuff online, and the weirdest thing happened. A European company that was creating fetish porn comics, but high quality fetish porn comics, because of course in Europe, everything has to be hardcover, high quality stuff. So I'm like, so they were like, we would like to hire you to, do this comic for us. I was like, could you like draw some samples? Here's a sample script. And I Googled them, they checked out. I'm like, holy crap, these guys are doing fucking amazing stuff. I forgot their name now because it was so long ago, but I'm like, sure, why not? And I started drawing and I couldn't stop drawing. I drew like a monster. And just as I was finishing those sample pages, I get a contact from Top Cow's editor, because Tyler Kirkham, previously an artist at Top Cow, now an artist at DC, I kind of got hooked up with him at some point, just kind of for fun, started, I colored some of his pages. And the Top Cow editor is like, hey, we would like you to color a book over Tyler's line work. I'm like, okay. So they're like, and the thing is, like, I was sitting there kind of going like, oh shit, and I already have this that I could do. It's like, what is the book? And they're like, well, we're doing a crossovers, Darkness versus Wolverine. And I'm just kind of staring blankly. I'm like, okay, I'm in. And I'm like, and the point is, I'm sitting there thinking like, when was the last time I felt that fire? And I'm like, when I was doing the sample pages of that fetish comic. Fuck it, you know what? And I turned to Linda, I'm like, I'm gonna make an alternate account on DeviantArt and just start drawing fetish pinups, just stupid shit, just basic shit like that I did back in those days, and see maybe something happens. And something did happen. And it was freaking hilarious. We spent hours here trying to figure out how to even name the account, because every account name was taken. So I ended up naming it Shinies. That was freaking hilarious. And I started doodling. I started making just kind of these fetish bondage stuff, stuff that we were intimately familiar with. At a certain point, I'm like, I'm just going to have them say a few words. Here's a joke. There's a joke. Let's make a little joke strip. Oh, hey, everybody likes it, and I like it, and this is fun. And let's make another joke strip. And then 20 joke strips later, how about I make this 2-page spread of how they first met, and then everything just went crazy, and that's how we got here.
When you developed the characters for Sunstone, were they from anything in your own life, or did you just all make it up on the fly? I mean, the two main characters of that book are really great and really well written too, and they're also written like normal people. You know what I mean? Their nuances, their quirks, their problems, the thought bubbles. It's all stuff I could hear myself or anyone else I've had read the comic book say to me, "Yeah, that sounds just like me."
Well, the thing is, my wife and I have, let's say, extensive knowledge about this stuff, and also, you know, we know people also from the community, and you know, you talk to people a lot and stuff, and you pick up on things. You know, the thing is, this is the kind of stuff that. It's one of those things that if you Google, like I've made that a point also in the book, like if you Google BDSM on the internet, like with the safety filter off, like you're going to see some crazy ass shit. But what you don't see, like you're going to see some fucking, you know, you're going to see faces of pain. But what you don't see is the laughter that follows, you know, and that's the thing. That's BDSM in a nutshell. It looks shocking and it's hilarious in its truest form for most people. Now, there are, of course, people who take these things to extremes, like, but again, human nature, we will find ways to take anything to the extreme. So basically, you know, most BDSM people that I've known in my life are complete nerds. Like that's one of those, because BDSM really is, like, I've made these comparisons in the book also, and it's sexual nerdiness. It's like, hey, let's dress up and, you know, let's do this little game of ours, you know, this little game of make believe and see what happens, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, neither one is the master and neither one is the slave, you know, like, you know, it's like there is no contract that you can sign that's gonna make that relationship a legitimate one, you know, but basically it's a bunch of sexual LARPers, and that's when you see that side of it, like you see that it's pretty much an amusing quirk of human nature. And it's a quirk of human nature that you can see kind of reflected in pretty much anything that we do, in anything that we love. You know, you're going to have people who are going to do things in a moderate way, in a fun way. And then you have the people who are going to take things way too far in anything. So, you know, it's just, we took something we knew about, and we took something about human nature that we knew, you know, repeated itself constantly. And, you know, I just started writing.
What do you have working on coming up after Switch?
I'm going to be finishing also by this summer. I'm going to have the first arc of Switch done. Then I'm going to have the first 5 volumes of Sunstone done and published. That's going to be then a completed first arc of Sunstone. After that, what follows is Mercy. That's the second arc of Sunstone. That's going to be focusing primarily on the story and backstories of Anne and Alan, characters from Sunstone, and their relationship and how that developed, which at the same time is going to be showing us a greater insight into the history of Alan and Allie. We're going to be seeing more of their college time together and stuff like that. We're going to be seeing the whole fallout to that. We're going to be seeing Anne's history, how Anne, you know, became friends with Cassie and stuff like that, how she went through her college phases and the silliness and the craziness of that thing. We're going to be seeing the history of Alan and Marion, in greater detail in the second volume of that arc, and then it's going to continue with Alan and Anne and their relationship developing as their paths kind of, you know, lead up to each other, and we're going to see some things that have been already hinted at and insinuated. Then after that arc is complete, comes the arc of Jasper, and that's primarily about Marion and James, and that's a whole, you know, next story. The point is, all of these arcs are gonna be intertwined. They're gonna be telling more about each other's story, but they're also kind of gonna continue each other's stories. So through Mercy, we're also gonna be seeing the continuation later on of Allie and Lisa's plot line, you know, stuff like that, and it's all gonna end up. It's basically gonna be 4 story arcs all together, 5 volumes each. So, you know, there's a lot of that universe to be told.
Okay, so Sunstone's only going to go for 5 volumes?
Under the name of Sunstone. It's every arc is called by the dominant couple's safe words. So the second arc is going to be Mercy, and that's going to both explain more about it's gonna expand on the histories, and it's gonna expand on the futures of the characters from Sunstone also. So they're all intertwined. So same comes with Jasper, and then the fourth arc is gonna pretty much conclude their stories. We're gonna see, the happy endings, the consequences, the stuff like that. There's a lot of writing and drawing to do.
Cool, awesome. Oh, hey, again, I mean, Sunstone. I'm looking forward to the next volume. I just finished volume 3. I haven't gotten into Switch yet, but I definitely plan on picking it up once it's out in trade paperback. And everything that you've done previously, you did some Inhuman covers and some Batman covers. It's all been really great stuff, and we really appreciate coming on the show with us. Do you have any website, social media stuff you'd like to plug so people can find you?
Not really. People stumble upon me constantly at this point. Like it's, I don't push my social media, and like just I'm just kind of that guy who makes a stupid thing, and the stupid thing ends up on the internet, and sooner or later somebody goes, "That's where you'll find the stupid guy." So that's pretty much how I get my following.
Are you going to be at any conventions coming up?
The only one planned right now is the New York City Comic Con this year, and that's about it. After Sunstone and Switch Arc 1 are done, I'm gonna kind of seclude myself for a little bit, take a bit of a break. I need to work on some health issues because 15 years of drawing comics have their way of messing with your spine.
Oh wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Every job has its own little thing that it has its own problems that you're gonna inevitably encounter. So
I will have to remember that because I'm going to be starting my own comic book soon.
Yep, welcome to pain.
Well, again, we appreciate you coming on the show. We really do.
Thanks.